Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Prime Minister Allen Chastanet has made it clear that the extension of the state of emergency from the 17th of May to the 16th of October will not hinder the island's general elections. With the elections constitutionally due in 2021, the Prime Minister maintains that the state of emergency will not impede the processes for the national exercise.
How is the state of emergency going to stop the election from taking place, Mr. Speaker? Since when a state of emergency affects it? When in St. Kitts they had a state of emergency, did it affect them in having an election? When Jamaica had a state of emergency, did it affect them having an election? When Trinidad and Tobago had elections with a state of emergency, did it affect them having an election, Mr. Speaker? The answer is no. Categorically. Okay, Mr. Speaker? It does not impede the ability to have an election. One of the critical decisions that has been, and I have been saying it repeatedly, to bring some relief to the members on the opposite side, that is going to guide the decision as to when we're going to have elections, is certainly, Mr. Speaker, when we believe that we can have elections in the safest way possible. But, I've said repeatedly, we are not in any way going to go contrary to the Constitution of St. Lucia.
According to St. Lucia's constitution, the state of emergency may be revoked during the 5-month period at the discretion of the Governor General. Prime Minister Chastanet says that government intends to come to an agreement with the opposition on COVID-19 protocols for the impending general election.
It's certainly my government's intention to make sure that we will work with the members on the opposite side, with arbitrary independent people, to make sure that we can have a very clear idea that once we are going to have elections, what the protocols would be, and that hopefully both sides will fulfill their obligation and commitment to adhering to them.
That was Prime Minister Allen Chastanet in Parliament on Tuesday. Independent Senator Adrian Auger is expressing difficulty in supporting the motion to extend the state of emergency to October. He says his reservation is not because it is unjustifiable, but rather the case to justify it has been unconvincingly made.
The extension of the state of emergency in St. Lucia is receiving opposition by many in society. Among the long list of people from all walks of life who are having difficulty accepting the extension is Independent Senator Adrian Auger. He says he does not believe that the government has made a convincing enough case, neither for the extension in principle, nor for the duration of 5 months.
Madam President, the state of emergency is an exceptional thing. And to toss it lightly about, as if it is the most natural thing in the world, is very, very worrisome. A state of emergency can only be granted under exceptional circumstances. And as we have labored through the current circumstances for some 15 or 16 months, depending on where you start to count, I do not think we are at the stage where a national state of emergency can be justified, given all of the evidence that is available to us, but more so given the evidence that has been presented to us in defense of this position.
According to Auger, the state of emergency confers exceptional powers on the government apparatus and should only be used for exceptional reasons and not as a standby mechanism.
Despite the many deliveries in the House today, the only reason given for the state of emergency, the only reason given which is germane to the argument, as if we were in a court of law arguing a case, is for the supposed maintenance of a curfew. In order for that argument to hold, it must not just be said over and over again as if it is gospel, but it has to be proven that the curfew itself is the one and only most important thing and the only mechanism at our disposal. If the state of emergency rests on that argument alone, the case has not been made. There are several other weapons in our arsenal for fighting COVID, and to have a state of emergency in place to justify a curfew as one of the possible things that you might need is not a convincing argument in my view, and the case has not been proven.
Further, Auger is concerned about the progression of the level of force by government.
The emphasis for control and prevention is wrong. The emphasis on power and enforcement is wrong. We are bent on insistence that we shall have our way instead of dealing with, as has been mentioned, on both sides, the importance of persuasion, education, individual and community empowerment and responsibility. The extension of a state of emergency for a further 5 months, in my view, is high-handed, it is brash, and it seeks to prohibit fundamental freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. And it is following a pattern which I was already quite uncomfortable with when the COVID-19 legislation was going through, because the government has acquired and given itself, through questionable means, powers to infringe on the rights of citizens, and there is a progression now that is extremely worrisome.
The motion to extend the state of emergency for another 5 months was passed in the Senate on Thursday. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
Meanwhile, Health Minister Mary Isaac called out the critics of the government and its COVID-19 policies for being unreasonable. She rebuffs arguments that a 5-month state of emergency is unnecessary given declining COVID infection numbers and an ongoing vaccination drive. Senator Isaac says while small gains have been made, the country is nowhere near where it needs to be.
Madam President, there is absolutely no question as to whether or not we need that declaration of a state of emergency. We needed it when we set it then. We needed it when we extended on it the first time, the second time, and we need it now. Maybe now more than ever, Madam President, as we are seeing that the numbers are declining or at least remaining stable. We are still getting on average about 100 cases per week, and that is still not satisfactory. While it is better than where we were before, it is still not satisfactory. Not satisfactory enough for us to loosen up on the protocols that we have that currently exist, which includes a curfew.
Senator Isaac, who is also the health minister, says there can be no letting up in the fight against COVID-19.
It is because of the measures that we have put in place that we are seeing some sort of, I don't even want to call it relief, Madam President, because it's just that the numbers seem to be remaining stable, declining a little and remaining stable. So this is just a semblance of a relief that we are seeing. We cannot drop our guard or let it down, because we can go back to a worse situation than where we were before. We know of Trinidad and Tobago right now. Our brothers and sisters there are really suffering. They're under tremendous pressure. We have Martinique, closer to home. We hear of India and we see what is happening. With such a large population, we cannot afford that in St. Lucia, Madam President. We would all be wiped out in a matter of 1 week. So for those people who are questioning the need for that curfew, I want to remind them to look at the news, the international news, and they will be quickly reminded of what can happen.
That was Leader of Government Business in the Senate and Health Minister Mary Isaac. How much time is allocated to an employee to cast their ballot in a general election? Former Electoral Commissioner Claudius Francis is dispelling the notion that employees are limited to 1 hour when going to cast their vote.
No, that's a myth. What the Act says is every employee shall have a minimum of 2 hours or however long it takes to cast the ballot. It goes on further to say that any employer who in any way penalizes an employee who has taken that time off because the employer may believe it's more than 1 hour, any employer who would penalize an employee, whether by deduction of wages, commits an election offense and is subject to those penalties that we spoke of earlier. So the law says a minimum of 2 hours and goes on to say, or for however long it may take. It can take a day because of circumstances.
That was former Electoral Commissioner Claudius Francis appearing on Hot 7 TV's The Hot Seat. Castries Mayor Peterson Francis says decisive action will be taken to address the stench of fish in the city. He met with fish vendors on Jabatis Street to address what he says is a perennial problem. Mayor Francis says fish vendors do not make proper use of bins. The vendors, however, say proper provision has not been made.
Complaints continue to be registered about the stench of fish around the city of Castries, particularly on Jabatis Street. On Thursday, Castries Mayor Peterson Francis met with the fishermen and fish vendors in that area to address the issue. Francis explained that it has been brought to his attention that the fish vendors are not utilizing bins, but rather throwing fish guts in nearby gutters. One fish vendor, Dial Seri, explained that fish vendors are doing the best with what they have. He called on the mayor to help them and provide them with the requisite materials, and they will without a doubt keep the area up to the standard that is being requested.
Well, we don't always have much problem here, apart from most times the smell of the place. And we will likely say the most part for us is our problem. So then if the mayor give us what we really want and we'll do what we're supposed to do, then we'll not have no problem. Instead people come in and they say they have a cent, and then we will take care of it. We can buy our own and every night after fish and do our own thing. But we just want the hose and the drum and the brooms, and then we could do whatever else we'll be needing to keep our environment clean. Mainly 6 of us really working outside there. So then we have to put our heads together and say, okay, if today three of us clean the yard, tomorrow is your next week. If you all don't want to do it, then you'll know, okay. Straight up. So if I do my part, you don't do a part. Well, you don't have no boy here, so you go and do it, you're vending somewhere else.
Mayor Francis in turn agreed to the requests of the vendors and promised that the Castries Constituency Council would look into providing them what is needed.
The problem we are having is that when they clean the fish, the guts is being put everywhere. The other situation that we have, we know that solid waste has taken out, like on a Sunday, we can't go to the dam because the dam is closed. We're understand why. I mean, we have had meetings with solid waste. Solid waste is in the same position with City Council. We are cash-strapped. So today I said I want to meet the village so as we could discuss to look for a solution as to what is happening here. And I'm very happy to hear, and you heard it for yourself, that they want to embrace it. They want to do their own. All what they need is a hose, the bins, and so on. So I welcome that, and we'll see that they get what they're looking forward to.
The fishermen explained that in order to achieve the level of cleanliness that is being demanded, the basic tools must be put in the area that has been designated for them to carry out their livelihoods. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. There's more news coming up after the break.